dos, tres. Bueno, quisiera comenzar. I would like to start this morning. I'm sorry, I started speaking Spanish. I would like to start this morning. We are going to be having sessions of 25 minutes each. We're going to have 3 sessions, and right at the end, we will have a Q&A session of 15 minutes. So I'd like to start introducing Tracy Klicka, who serves as Director of Development for the Homeschool Foundation, the charitable arm of HSLDA, which financially helps families that are homeschooling through hard times. She is the widow of former HSLDA Senior Counsel Tracy Klicka, homeschooling mom of 7 adult children, and mommy of 1 grandchild with 2 more on the way. As a seasoned homeschooler and gifted writer and a speaker for over 19 years, Tracy has addressed thousands of parents at homeschooling conventions and women's events, as well as contributed to her late husband's several books on homeschooling. She and her husband, Peter, live in Northern Virginia. Tracy? Hi. I know, yeah.
Yeah. We have a little trying to work out, because I think they're recording this, but the cord doesn't reach long enough for my PowerPoint. So so I'm going to go ahead and just hold this big contraption here. It's technology and it works, so it's good. This is a talk that I've loved preparing because it really speaks to the heart of a homeschooling mom, and not my professional hat at the Homeschool Foundation. So, but what I wanted to start with, so I'll be telling you about my story of homeschooling and the role relationships in the homeschool family have had on my children. But I thought I would start with some research that just documents the benefit of home education for the family and the well-being of the child from a standpoint of relationship and the factors that determine if a child has a healthy view of themselves, self-esteem. There we go. That's a lot easier. So just really quickly, we'll go through this. And I wanted to start with research about intact families. That there's a lot of research about intact families and about single parent families. There's not much information about adoptive families or families where children are raised by grandparents. So I'm focusing primarily on the research involving intact families. And so the first thing that research has shown us is that the relationship between parents is consistently linked to a child's well-being. Secondly, children who have 2 biological parents are more likely to exhibit behavioral self-control and are less likely to be exposed to high levels of aggravated parenting, meaning that intact family, there's less conflict in the home than when you don't have an intact family, and this corresponds to the child's ability to adapt better. And the third point is children living with 2 married adults have in general fewer emotional or behavioral problems. In addition, children who are raised in intact families have on average higher academic achievement, educational aspiration, which is what Deb Bell talked about, the motivation, the academic motivation. So that's what that addresses, the educational aspiration that not only exists in the homeschool environment, but well beyond after the child graduates, as well as children have a greater sense of self-determination. I can, or a can-do attitude, as we say in the United States. and a greater self-esteem. And there are actually, there are tools to measure, there's tests that measure a child's self-esteem, and it's how they view themselves and the world around them. So children in intact families have these things. And then the last point is fathers of intact families spend on average more time with their children and enjoy greater family cohesion. Now, the reason I started with this research is because this is homeschooling or home education is kind of a subset of the larger context of intact family. This is intact family, whether they homeschool or not. When you then go on and look at the research, so these are the notes. If anyone is interested in these, they can just see me for that, for those points. But now when you look at the research about home education and children's well-being, it's even more favorable than just the intact family. So the first point is that there are stabilizing forces within home educating families that accommodate higher levels of adaptability in the child and cohesion in the family than families whose children are more conventionally schooled. So each of us will be sharing about our own stories, sort of taking the data, the research, and then seeing how it actually plays out in the family life. This is very much true for my family. The second point is due to increased time together and shared experiences between parents and home-educated children. Children's social capital is a term that was invented, which basically means that the child's social expressions of concepts such as trust and love are increasing in the home education environment. In addition, daily increased time, the adult-child interaction, and opportunities for parents and children to reach common goals in home education allow those children to establish stronger familial bonds and enhanced communication into and through the young adult years. These are critical years for young people to be developing toward becoming self-sufficient adults. And so this is very important during this time with home education, helping that. Another thing that research has shown is that home-educated children develop as well or better socially, emotionally, and psychologically than institutionally schooled children and youth. And then the last point on this is that respect for individual differences, social consideration, and concern for others are values which are consistently shared by home-educated children. How many of you had an opportunity to hear young Mr. Chang yesterday in his research paper that he wrote and presented? That was one of his key points that he made, is that in the home education community, it is consistent that those students are open to respecting other ideas and caring for others, reaching out in their communities to not only be thinking about themselves. And I see that as a big fruit of home education. So again, I have the statistics for that if you are interested. So now with the remaining time, what I wanted to do is just to share a little bit about my family story. Thank you. My late husband, Chris, and I, we raised 7 children, and we home educated them from the very beginning. I say we started before kindergarten because my oldest daughter, who's there with the ribbon thing around her neck, she, at 3, begged me to teach her to read. And so we started a little early because she was very highly motivated. And I'm so glad that I did. We started simple. So my husband and I were married in 1984. At that time, we didn't even know about homeschooling. We had never even heard of it. But my husband was a legal intern. He was an attorney, and he was a legal intern for a constitutional law firm called the Rutherford Institute. That summer, we were first married. And so his assignment for the 3 months during that summer was to research all of the case law and statute that had anything to do with home education. And no one had ever done this before. He was the first one to ever do this. And so at the end of the 3 months, he had a 450-page document on all of this research that he had done. And so then the following summer, we graduated. From undergraduate, and my husband from law school. He knew after the research that someday when we had children, he wanted to homeschool. But he had no idea that homeschool legal defense existed. So when he applied for jobs for his law degree, it was in the area of constitutional law. But Mike Ferris, who was the president of HSLDA, was also senior counsel for a pro-family group in Washington, D.C., and saw Chris's resume and said, he knows more about home education than I do because of all his research. And so he hired Chris, and Chris in 1985 became the first full-time attorney for HSLDA. So sometimes I like to joke that some weeks or months or years in my homeschooling, I did it because I had to, because my husband worked for HSLDA and I didn't have a choice, but really we loved homeschooling. Back in the early years at HSLDA, we knew that homeschooling was a good option, but there was not a lot of research to support how effective it was. A lot of people were doing it, but Brian Ray was just getting started doing his research. And so Chris's job was to try to make it legal in every state and to work with the other attorneys to do that and to just make an environment for families to be able to teach their children at home without fear, without having a escape route they had to have planned if they got the knock at the door in the middle of the night or something. And so in a way, seeing the commitment of other families increased our commitment to want to do this when God gave us children. And so we started our little family. So just a few years later, we had a couple children, and I was already actively homeschooling my oldest at that time. But then God sent us this little kind of curve in the road, a little detour when my husband in 1994 was diagnosed with MS. And he started to go downhill very quickly with his health. He had to use a cane to walk and was told that he could be bedridden within a year or two because of the disease. But we decided we wanted to continue to homeschool because we wanted to invest in our children's lives, no matter what happened to my husband and his health. And he was very active in trying to use alternative therapies and supplements and diet to help with the MS, and it was very effective. And so just a few years later, just 4 years later, we had 6 children, one of official school age. My oldest was 7. And so we had 6 children, 7 and under. I had 4 children in diapers, and I was nursing 2 because I had twins. So those were really, really busy years, you can imagine. And I didn't do a lot of formal academics at this time, but actually it was a good thing. That was when I really started thinking about what we wanted our homeschool to look like and what values and things we wanted our children to learn. And so during those early years, we did not do a lot of formal academics. We spent a lot of time outdoors. My kids did a lot of observing and just enjoying nature and sketching. I would spend a lot of time reading whole books to my children. They would listen to books. They would read them themselves. And we worked on things like building thinking skills and hands-on learning, life skills and organization. Obviously, we needed to be organized with so many little ones underfoot. So they learned at age 2 and 3 to empty the dishwasher and all of that. But we also had a lot of creative play. So my children played together all the time, and they put their creative energies together and collaborated and exercise ingenuity and story writing, and those were all so good for my children. They are now very independent thinking adults who are entrepreneurs, and they're creative and they're problem solvers. Not only, but that's a part of who they are, and I think because we did that in the early years. And then as the middle years of our homeschooling, we continued with a lot of the things we did in the early years, the creativity of making sure they had playtime in the afternoons when we weren't doing more formal instruction. And then we started adding, we actually did very little writing in the early years. I wanted them to be able to think and communicate verbally. And if they could do that, then teaching writing becomes easy. It's how you organize your thoughts. So we would spend a lot of time asking questions, getting them to think and be able to say it with their mouth. And then the writing came after, and then it was easy to teach the grammar and the writing. But then we started science, but it was still not very formal. It was a lot of observation and classification and that sort of thing. We continued thinking skills, and then we started doing encouraging group projects, which we included at times other families so that they were working on teamwork and collaboration. But all of this time, it's all about the relationship that they had with each other and with us, and then with other children and other adults. And then as time went by, my husband's MS continued to get worse. And he had a period where he was doing well. But in 1998, when my youngest son was just 6 months old, we came home from a trip, and 3 of our children had chicken pox. And he had never gotten it, but he tested for it and was told he was immune. So he jumped right in and caring for the children, and he got chicken pox. Very, very bad. He was paralyzed for 3 days and didn't know if he would ever walk again. And so after that, the MS just continued to take him down little by little. And so a new element of relationship in the home school became my children learned to serve their father. We learned how to make all our bread from scratch, only organic garden. We did all this to honor our father, their father, and support him, and to love one another. And that became so important part of our homeschooling, to do that. As we, in the middle years and in the high school years, we still had opportunity to do things as a family. We would travel. We would do field trips as a family. I got my kids out in the real world. As John Taylor Gatto said, he would sneak kids out of the classroom to get them out there. But home educating families don't have to do that. We can just go and go when all the kids are in school, and then nobody's in the museum. So we have all the museum to ourselves, which was always a lot of fun. And this was in 2007. My husband's MS was progressing quite a bit more. We were speaking at a homeschool conference in Florida, so we did get to go to Ratland, right? Mickey Mouse Land. Not rat, as a mouse. But we went to Disney World in Florida, and that was our last family vacation that we had together because of my husband's MS. But I want to, with the last few minutes, talk a little bit about what kinds of things we did in the later years, because that's right before your children sort of, you shoot the arrow and they're off as adults. And even though my husband was using a scooter at this time, he couldn't walk on his own, even though he, many falls and injuries and things with the MS, we were still able to give our children wonderful opportunities to develop their gifts, to pursue things that they loved in addition to their formal academics. We did more formal academics in the high school years, but we never did just the formal academics. We would give our children opportunities to have other mentors, teach them other teachers like foreign language and science, because we felt that was good for them to be able to learn from other people who were experts in their area and develop relationship with other adults, which they loved. They love having mentors. And then also to give our children opportunities to not just get a job and work, but find a job that they could enjoy and learn the most they could from it. Maybe partner with someone who was starting a business and help them as they started their business, so they learn business entrepreneurial skills. But all through these years, the relationship was central. All of these things you do are good. They add to your children's academic abilities and experience, but what was most important was the relationship building. And yes, we had plenty of conflict in our home. We had plenty of opportunity to instill in the children character, which I've told my children over and over, your character is worth more than anything else you'll ever possess. The best thing you can ever have is integrity. That's the best gift. Don't worry about money, don't worry about fame, but be someone of integrity and humility and sincerity, and you will be a wonderful part of your world. You will give much to your world. So in those later years, we did work on a lot of those things, but we still had opportunities for our kids to develop special gifts that they had. And so, but you can see that my children were very close to their father. He was very involved in our homeschooling, which I think makes a big difference. Dads, if you can get involved. And so also the children, we just have enjoyed a very close relationship over the years. These are my grown daughters, and my second oldest just had a baby 5 weeks ago, her first. And you never stop being a parent. They want you in their lives more than ever. So that's a good thing. If you have built good relationships while they're growing up, they will want you as part of their lives, you know, even when they're in the adult years. And to us, we would always say that no matter what happens, that we will always be family. So my husband is no longer with us, but we were all together right up to the very end, and he is still very much part of our lives. And my children always remember their father with so much affection and gratitude for how he laid down his life for my children. And so just the last thing, and then I want to share a video with you, a real short video. This is home educating our children. This is what it has done for us, which is the most important things. It has deepened our love for each other. It has strengthened our faith in God. It has fostered a continued love for learning. As Deborah Bell mentioned, how important that is. It has encouraged my children to serve others, and it has provided opportunities for them to be who God made them. And on that note, I'm going to, give me just a moment. What I want to share with you is just a short video, and I will tell you what this is. So my youngest child, John, when he was 11, he had an opportunity to be in a film, a movie, as a featured extra. He had never done this before. He had no training, but we had worked so much on communication and respect for authority, and he was never afraid. He could talk to anybody very comfortably. He enjoyed talking to adults. He enjoyed learning from mentors. And so he auditioned for a film, and while he was filming is when this is in 2009, is when my husband took critically ill. We were at a conference in Colorado, and so we had to pull him off the film set a couple days early to fly out to Colorado so that we could all be together when my husband was near dying. But about 6 months after, my son said, "I love doing movies." And I said, well, we will just pray and see if God will bring you more opportunity. Well, God 6 months later, brought an opportunity for him to be in another film in a lead role as a young boy of a true story of a U.S. soccer Olympian. And then several months later, he was able to be in a very big production just as an extra, but it's good experience, and filmed in Williamsburg and, colonial attire and everything. And then in 2011, so he was 13, he had an opportunity to audition for a film called about the early life of Josh McDowell, who is a apologetist for the Christian faith. He's written over 130 books, and he's well known all around the world. And John was able to be the young Josh McDowell in this movie. So I just want to share the trailer. And this is the fruit of relationship building in home educating your family. Sorry, I want to make it big.
I just want to see you graduate from high school. And then I want to die.
Die?
Can't go on, son.
Want more?
I'll kill you! You hear me?
Josh! Promise me that you will never, ever be an alcoholic. Promise me that you'll be the kind of son that I can be proud of.
Sure, Mom.
No, promise me. Promise me.
I promise.
How could you ever love a father like me?
Off of my property! Ain't you gonna do something? I built that house!
And promised it to your son.
The hell I did! You were too drunk to remember! Get on out of here!
Crying's not gonna do anyone any good, Josh.
I'm sorry, Pastor. This is just too much to ask.
I'm not asking you, Josh.
Whoever touch me again, I'll kill you. You understand me?
No one understands. Dad, I have something to say to you.
Even if he did exist, how could a man who lived 2,000 years ago possibly influence someone's life today?
Well, I guess that's what you'll need to find out.
And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him. Then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
It's true. It's true.
So thank you for letting me share my story with you, including that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And I think we are all here because we love our children. And that is the framework that is allowing us to pour out love to our children. And that becomes like a workshop, our home, to exercise our love. And once we have that experience, we would like to share with others. And that is something that in our Latin American countries, I think we are very challenged to really start sharing with others, and to think that we can take the initiative to start ministries or opportunities to really start doing something else besides our families when the time comes. Now I'd like to present Rich and Barb Heki. They have served as homeschooling leaders in the United States for 15 years. They homeschool their 4 children from birth to adulthood. Rich and Barb are the founders and directors of Grandparents of Homeschoolers, and an international organization designed to help grandparents become supportive and actively involved in the home education of their grandchildren, whether they live locally or long distance. And also they are very passionate defenders of parental rights and homeschooling freedom, and view education as a lifestyle that is enhanced and strengthened by involving all generations. Rich.
Thank you very much. We're very glad to be at this conference. And again, we're Rich and Barb Heki, grandparents of homeschoolers. And we're going to talk about the power of relationships, getting grandparents involved. And now a little about us. This is our family. And we have raised 4 children, homeschooled them from birth to adulthood. In the center there, we have, right in the center is Jason, our oldest. He works for parentalrights.org, and his wife Aubrey, and our twins, Aaliyah and Lydia. And then we have our daughter, April. She works for a international ministry called His Little Feet, which promotes adoption of orphans. And they actually have, she goes around with about 20 orphans from around the world, and they sing and put on a program to raise awareness about orphans and getting them adopted. And they're based out of Colorado, but they travel all over the United States. Then there's Ryan and Andrew. Those are our twins. And they've come quite a ways because they were born premature, but several years ago they had a chance to climb up to base camp of Mount Everest. So they've gone a long ways. Had a lot of breathing difficulties when they were born, but come a long ways. Anyway, they've both been involved in internships, and they've been away from home for a while, but now they're both back home. Ryan in the white is studying to IT security is what he's working on, and getting his certification. And then Andrew is doing online for engineering. Okay. So we want to ask you folks a few questions in regards to grandparents' involvement. How many have grandparents that are involved in educating the grandchildren? Anybody here? A few? Okay, great. All right. And how many have at least one grandparent who opposes homeschooling? Is there anybody here? Right, okay. And again, it can be sometimes the same family with different grandparents. How many have grandparents living in home with you? Anybody? Okay, because sometimes that happens as well. All right.
Okay, our mission statement for grandparents of homeschoolers is to encourage, inspire, and equip grandparents to support, engage in, and delight in the home education adventure of their grandchildren. That's what we want to do for everybody around the world. We are international, and so everybody is welcome to join. It's free. And parents and grandparents are both welcome to join our ministry. You can join on our website or here at the conference, and you'll get materials and information and stuff from us and resources. We have a website. We're on Facebook, Pinterest, and occasionally Twitter, but not a whole lot of grandparents tweet yet, so we haven't really gotten big time into Twitter. And I also wanted to pass around this clipboard. We're having a drawing. We have a booth at the back of the room on the 10th floor, and we're going to give away an art kit, a real nice art sketching kit. And so everyone who signs up, we're going to have a drawing tomorrow, and I think they're going to announce it tomorrow evening who the winner is. So you're welcome to sign up for that if you'd like. Okay, some statistics. This is really interesting. Dr. Carl Pillemer of Cornell University wrote that as many as 9 out of 10 adult grandchildren feel their grandparents influence their values and behavior. It just shows the powerful, powerful influence of grandparents. And another one, half of all grandparents live more than 200 miles from their grandchildren. I'm sorry, 200 miles, 360 kilometers. Is that right? Yep. Okay. So what that means is that half of all grandparents that live away from their grandchildren are still having a huge, huge influence on their values and behaviors. So grandparents are important no matter how close or far away they live. And we're going to later on try and give you a few ideas for things that distant grandparents can do to stay engaged with their grandchildren.
Okay. Getting grandparents actively involved in education, not just babysitting, does 4 things. It deepens the relationships between grandparents and grandchildren. It takes the stress off parents.
How many of you feel stressed out right now? Who feels the most stressed out? Raise your hand if you're the most stressed out. You were the first to raise your hand? Can you catch?
Hey, there you go.
Squeeze out when you get stressed.
It reinforces what the parents are already teaching. And it provides support, encouragement, and a layer of protection when parents are being persecuted by their government or others for homeschooling. Now, there are 3 scenarios that we focus on with grandparents. One is geography. They can be actively, regularly involved whether they live close by or a long distance. Our grandchildren are a long distance from us, so we have a vested interest in this long distance relationship. We provide ideas and resources for those that want to get involved but lack the confidence that they can teach. And we educate and draw in those who oppose homeschooling. Now, here's a couple quick tips. Grandparents can be your best advertisement. They sell homeschooling to one another. Those who oppose hear from those that are excited and realize, gee, maybe we're missing out on something. And then, of course, homeschool conferences. We're so encouraged that at this homeschool conference, there's several grandparents that have come along with the rest of the family. You might recognize these guys. So that was just so encouraging to us to see that. And grandparents can help dispel myths and worries about homeschooling. They can put together a slideshow or a little photo album maybe that they carry with them that shows the breadth and richness of the education that their grandchildren are getting.
And we're just going to show you a few quick slides as an example of what you can do, especially if grandparents or anybody else, friends, other relatives who don't support homeschooling, they're really suspicious about it, they don't think your kids are socialized. So what you do is you prepare a slideshow. Everywhere you go, everything you do, whether at home or out and about, take pictures of what the kids are doing. And here's just a few examples. Whoops. Okay. If they're on any kind of a team or whatever, that shows lots of social interaction. So take team pictures. If they have a musical instrument that they're good at and they participate in recitals, include that. Going the wrong way, sorry about that. Just a minute. Here we go. I'm sorry. Okay.
You're there.
Okay, and one thing, if you can show community service, so it shows they're a part of the community, visiting, singing at a nursing home, and visiting with residents. Take pictures of them. Older siblings helping other siblings learn. That's something that government school kids or families don't get. They just don't understand that, so include that. Launching rockets. Get a group of kids together and do a fun science project. Take lots of pictures. If they're in a choir, whether it's a church choir or a homeschool choir. Contests. If they enter contests, make sure you get pictures of that and really the step-by-step process of what they're doing. Growing crystals, things they can do in the kitchen. Record it. And then, of course, if you have any kind of a homeschool graduation ceremony, take lots of pictures of that and include that in your show. And even if you have little kids, go to a homeschool graduation ceremony and take pictures there and put it in your album, because that's what your kids watched. And people that look at your album or slideshow will see, hey, they really do graduate. They don't just disappear into oblivion somewhere. Okay, we wanted to hand out our ministry brochure. We have them at our booth too, but we'll just kind of pass it around. We have, the color one is our ministry brochure. Inside there's a black and white brochure. Tells a little bit about us. We want to share kind of our story with you. We are Christians and homeschool from a Christian perspective, so we have that testimony in there. It's why we do what we do, and so we'd love to share that with you as well. And then there is a grand group brochure. We're trying to get grandparents connected together to meet in groups, because they can encourage each other and share ideas of what they do with their own grandchildren. And it's just a really encouraging, and it's a good place to bring grandparents that really don't like homeschooling, because they get the excited viewpoint from the ones who love it. And then we also need international advisors. And that's nothing big and doesn't take any time. We want to help encourage you in your own countries. So if you would like to be an advisor, what that means is that you would just kind of let us know occasionally what's going on in your country in homeschooling and what your needs are, what the grandparent situation is, and how we can help. We would love to have that, so you're welcome to talk to us up at our booth or after this workshop if you want to do that.
Okay, here is what grandparents can do to make it easy for them to teach school. Have them start with something that they know well, like a hobby or a skill. Then have them add something that they don't know but would like to learn, such as maybe learning to play guitar. Then they and the grandchildren can learn together. This is to show grandparents that they can teach what they don't know because they learn it together, they study together with the grandkids. You were going to pass out the cards too? Okay. So we got some, go ahead.
I'm just going to pass these out real quick. It's a Bible verse that everybody can relate to no matter what faith they're from. It says they shall bear fruit in their old age. They will be fresh and flourishing. And that is grandparents. We want to be fresh and flourishing for our grandkids.
Okay. We're going to keep moving here. Now, this is for grandparents that live locally. You can help the grandchildren start a business. Parents don't have time to add this to their schedule, so this would be a great thing to do with the grandkids. Simply take the children's interests or talents and help them build a business around them. And in the parts, as you do that, you can start with something easy and just write maybe a business plan, very simple one for younger kids and more complex for older students.
Okay, I'm going to give you, we're running short on time here, so I'm going to just give you one quick idea for a long distance. Really? We're okay? Okay, all right. Okay, let me go. Okay, I'll start down here. Okay, one twist that you can do that's fun for the kids is try and have the grandparents do fun things all the time. And we had something called the reading tree. And we went outside and read books in a tree. The kids would scamper up a little higher than I would, but when I was young, I was, pretty good at it. Now I probably would sit in the lower branches. So grandparents can even sit in a chair down at the bottom of the tree. But that is so memorable. They will always remember the reading tree. They might not remember the book if you read it on the couch in your living room, but they're going to remember that tree. Political campaigns cover like 20 different academic subjects. If you're involved in a political campaign, everything from public relations to data entry to debate skills and analytical skills. That's very good.
I can talk about. Okay. One other thing we want to mention is our children and other children we know have done things like book writing, starting organic produce businesses, bread baking, parakeet breeding, car repair, vocal and instrument music, home remodeling, eBay sales, landscaping, sewing, soap making, catering, and pet sitting.
Okay, grandparents can get involved in teaching a business or helping kids start a business because they have the time that parents don't always have. But one of the things that we'll do is, for our kids, is those skills that you learn, those business skills, whether it's a Kool-Aid stand or something else, they follow on, they apply to any business. Once you start a business, you can start any business. And and our son did this in college. He had several businesses in high school and elementary, really, just small things, and then he took those same skills and started a business with a college professor and a friend of his in college that he's running right now. One thing that we wanted to share that just a really neat idea for long-distance grandparenting is if you can the grandparents can write a story, a book, actually, with their grandchild. The grandchild writes a sentence or a paragraph, sends it to the grandparent, and then the grandparent writes one. And they go back and forth till the story's finished. And then they add artwork. They can add their own original artwork, photos, whatever. And then online you can get these photo finishing books, where you upload photos into it. Well, you upload the text as well, and you put a title for the book. You help with editing skills for what the child has written, and then you have it by the author's name, by Grandma and Grandpa and the grandchildren. And then you can print out multiple copies of those. And it's just a wonderful memento, and they learn so much. Okay, what we want to get to is we're going to end with the best reason of all for homeschooling. Okay, and this is Jessalyn. She was age 10. She was a good friend of our daughter, who was about the same age, and they moved out of state. They came back into our state for her grandmother's funeral, and it was at an old country church where they have the cemetery on one side of the road and the church on the other. And Jessie and her sisters and all of her friends were just kind of, they were laughing and walking around, and after everything was over, they were playing outside, and they were going to cross the street into the cemetery area. And Jessie wasn't paying any attention. She was just laughing and having fun. She stepped out into the street, and a car mowed her down. It hit her. She died instantly. It was very comforting to her parents because they were Christians. She was a very rock-solid believer in Christ. She loved Jesus. And so the parents were very, very comforted. But the one thing I will always remember that her mom told me at the funeral was, because we homeschooled, I'm so glad we homeschooled, because I had Jessie with me every day for 10 years. If we would have sent her off to a school, I would have only had her for 5. And grandparents, it's the same thing. All that time that grandparents can put in with grandkids because they're homeschooled. Let them know how precious a time that is. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, the family is a workshop for love. I would take just 30 seconds to talk about grandmother. My mother-in-law, grandmother of my children, she was living about 400 kilometers away from where we live in. She got by herself because her children moved away of the city. Then I talked to her and I told her, you're not a young lady anymore, and you have your children, your grandchildren, that we would like you to live with them and to share with them. And so we are gonna buy a house so that you can come to live nearby to us so that you can share with them. And she is so happy. The other day was telling me on tears. And she said, I am so happy to be with you. So she has lunch every day with us, and she goes to the same club with our children, and she just gets to enjoy them. I'd like now to present Leigh. She's not Chinese. She's from the States. She's Leigh. Leigh Bortins. She's a national acclaimed educator, perhaps best known for her ability to demystify the fundamental tools of learning. As a teacher, author, and commentator, Leigh is accredited with helping to launch the home-centered learning. It's a movement. And Leigh is the author of numerous books. She's the founder of Chief Academic Officer and Classical Conversations. Leigh.
Bon dia. One more day. So thank you for being here. All right. I could just sit down. What you just heard were two very wonderful presentations that were slightly different from each other, but I think basically said the same thing. Just a lot of love in your family, a lot of activities are super important. So what I thought I would do a little differently is, I know, it's really special, isn't it? She's emotional. In fact, it's hard not to cry at the end of these. It's to maybe take a more philosophical perspective, because you just gave us such amazing things to do. And how do you help yourself as a parent have that kind of attitude where you enjoy being with your children for a lifetime and enjoy learning with them and loving them? And can I turn this off? Do you know? Maybe it is off. Just get some. I'll stand over here. Because in our context in the United States, the older children get the fewer that are home educated. And that makes me really disappointed and sad, because I feel like the older years, the high school years, were really the best years that we had with our children. There's kind of an attitude in our country that teenagers are a pain to be around, that they're obnoxious and self-centered. And I think that you've seen two families show you the exact opposite, that they can be raised to be men and women with good attitudes from a very early age. And so I'm a new grandparent. And my daughter-in-law was not home educated. She is a wonderful woman. I cannot believe what a great mother she is. And so I'm thinking all the time about, because I'm the mother-in-law, I have to watch what I say and how I say it. So I'm learning discretion in a way that I never had to learn with 4 sons and a husband. And so I think about what are the things I just really hope that she would embrace. And what are the things I hope my son remembers, her husband? I think about the mistakes I made, and I'm so glad that God lets us do everything 3 times. Right? We're a child and we go to school. We're a parent and we educate. And now I'm a grandparent and I get to do it again. And so the first time, it's all this knowledge being poured into you as a child. And then the second time, you mean like I have to actually raise children now and live this out, and I have a bazillion questions, and what am I going to do, and how's it going to work? You get this kind of calm and peace of, okay, we've done it. And now I know my children, you can do it too. And maybe I actually have some wisdom to offer to you. Does that make sense? And so I'm looking forward to putting another 30 years into helping whatever grandchildren the Lord is gracious to give us. And I see Tracy nodding, and I know the Hekis feel that way too. So just for some perspective, for those of you that may be new to homeschooling, or your children are younger, or you're thinking about it, is I have already homeschooled 32 years. So if I live to be 96, that means 1/3 of my life was spent getting up, doing math problems, doing devotions, reading books at night, and making sure, everyone in general was cared for. And the fact that I have the energy, as does Tracy and Barbara and their spouses, to do it again, to be excited about our grandchildren, just shows me that you don't have to get weary, that you can be strong for the long run in your home education. So some of the things that helped me were, well, first, as a Christian, were some Bible verses. So no matter what creed you live by, pick a couple of things that will just be always foundational to you, that you can always fall back to, because sometime in the midst of battle, you just kind of lose your marbles. And so it's good to have a couple things to hang on to. So for me, there's two verses. One is Proverbs 24, 3-4. And this verse defines what we think of as family. Through wisdom is a house builded, by understanding it is established, and by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. So this talks about a house. Well, so as a Christian, we're building a house for his name, a place for our Lord to live. And we believe it's our church, it's our community, it's our home, it's our self, right? That the Holy Spirit resides within us. So we want to be sure that this house is built with wisdom, with understanding, and with knowledge. So you've got this balance of how do you achieve that, because knowledge to me is grammar, it's things you know, it's ideas, it's words, it's vocabulary. It's very schoolish, textbook, online looking kind of things. It's information that you put into your head. But is that enough to fill a house and to build it? No, even though that's precious and it's pleasant. Little children love nursery rhymes, they love stories, right? They love songs, they like memorizing things. But you have to understand, you have to have understanding. And understanding from a home education perspective is to me, is to teach children to think. So you have all this information, so what? What are you going to do with it? How do you understand it? What's its purpose? What's its reason? And then if you get to the point where you actually have good questions and you start to have good answers and you live your life out with those answers, you begin to establish wisdom. You begin to say, that worked, that didn't work. I should do that again, I shouldn't do that again. And so we go through these kind of stages of learning, and our younger children, they're not too wise. Though every now and then they astound you with an amazing question or idea. But what we're aiming for in the long run is these high schoolers, these older students, who embrace wisdom and virtue as the crux of their education. Not how many credits they got in math or science or history, because that's really, really easy to get compared to being wise and virtuous people. So how as a parent do you help live that out? Well, I can tell you I did it really badly. I have never had today before, with whatever it has to offer, with the children we have at the age that they are, and my husband with the issues he's dealing with, right? Every day is new, the challenges of it. So let yourself fail and know it's okay. You're not going to do it right every day, every time, because you've never had this day before. So you need to rely on the wisdom of the past and the upbringing of your family and your peers around you. And you're still going to make mistakes, and it's not going to always go so well. So don't let anybody make you feel like because you're not using their curriculum or doing things their way, or your children are in trouble, or whatever it is, that you are a failure as a parent. You're not. You're trying to figure this all out too. This is your second time going through what it means to, have an education. because you're actually the one providing it now. So allow yourself to fail. I think that's really important. Another thing I think is really important is to see our children rightly. There will be disagreement in this conference as to who our children are and how we deal with them. So I'll just share what I have learned, and you can agree or disagree. There's a controversy in the United States about are parents, friends to their children, or are they the parents to the children? Are they authoritarian, or do they try to make sure everything's fun and the kids are happy and they love what's going on? And for me, those ideas are important to think about. They're not what defines my relationship with my children. As a Christian, I'm told that my children are only my children for a short time, that they actually are my brothers and sisters, and that they change from sons and daughters to brothers and sisters. And so the relationship changes from my duty to fill them and fill them and fill them with love and knowledge and virtue and all the great things that I can think of. But something happens, especially as a mother of 4 sons. They do this. So for 12 years, 14 years, my sons looked up to me physically, and they better do so spiritually and mentally and in every way possible. But one day they do this. And that's my season for them to learn to look up at them, to teach them that their mother respects them, that she thinks that they're just capable of anything, and that they too can go forth and be as amazing as their father is. Because if a man can't have his mother respect him, that's really going to set him up for some difficulties in life. And so the other thing that changes for us by knowing that we're raising our children and turning them into brothers and sisters, sons and daughters become brothers and sisters, is they change from this creature who is respectful of you and obedient and knows what your authority is, and they may question it, but they cheerfully will go on because they know that you love them and have their best interest in mind. But it begins to change. Your children go off to older high school or college or their careers, or they leave, and they need to be able to do what they need to do. And I remember the first time my eldest was away at college, and he did something was pretty bad. And, so my husband and I talked about it, and we were thinking, you can't spank them anymore. You can't ground them, can't withhold their allowance, can't say no going to rugby this week, right? So how do we do this? This is the first time that we had to deal with it. What do we do with adult children? And to remember that that he no longer really is my son in the same way. He's my brother. I'm allowed to sharpen him, I'm allowed to challenge him, I'm allowed to give him ideas, but he's got to make his own decisions. And so we called him up and we said, we're just disappointed, but you're going to have to deal with this the best you can. And he said, oh, that's so much worse. Could you please come just spank me? So knowing that this isn't forever, in one sense, the relationship changes, right? The relationship does not stay exactly the same. But we have another idea in our country that I think is really, really harmful, and it's that at 18, 19, 20, somewhere in that range, maybe younger for some families' children and older for others, but that somehow your parenting stops. And it just doesn't. I think Tracy and Barbara both said the same thing. And so parents will panic. Their children turn like 15, 16. Oh my gosh, I don't have all the right credits, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. Because in our culture, we get this sense that if our kids don't measure a certain way by the time they're 18, we're a huge failure. All right? That's a lie straight from hell. You have all of your children's life to influence them, affect them, and more importantly, be influenced and affected and change yourself for the better too. That our children, well, what you find out, I believe in homeschooling, having done it for 30 some years now, is I thought it was about my children. It had very, very little to do with them. It had everything to do with my husband and I becoming mature, wise, elderly grandparents that were actually capable of sharing not just what we learned with our own families, but to help all kinds of families in our community. And so the sanctification process never ever ends. And one of the things that's then very difficult about homeschooling is when your children mess up, you have nobody to blame it on but yourself, right? And so they are such a wonderful mirror to the things you yourself need to work on. And so we talked a lot about the virtue and the character development and the things that are just beautiful and good and true and lovely that we want for our children. But what I want to just really emphasize with you is that may all happen for your children. But if you make sure it happens for yourself, that you are always pursuing learning and always pursuing the best of it, at least one of you will come out of the generation having been improved, but I can pretty much promise you that your whole family will be better because of it. And so that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Leigh. We are going to have time for questions and answers. I was just saying that, yes, family is a workshop for love. And when we learn to give love, we are going to find that is so good. And we're going to find that our children are going to be learning how to give love. And also for us to share with other families. And in Latin America, that I said, it is not easy sometimes that we take the initiative to do something. We tend to think that that is done in Germany or in the US or somewhere else, but it can be done in our countries. It's just a matter for us to get the courage to go out there and do it. We have 5 children. The first 2 are very outgoing. They didn't have any problem to have friends. Very easily, the guys, someday they said, I don't have anybody to play with. And he said, well, you know what I'll do? I'll do a summer camp. And then he started printing pages and then he started sharing everywhere. And then suddenly he was 8 and he had children of 5 and 8 and 10. And he was the summer camp leader in our house. And but then they too are very outgoing. You probably have seen Mariana around here, is my daughter. But then we have another 3 children that they are not as outgoing as the 2 bigger ones. So it was a challenge for us. And at the beginning, we were saying, what are we going to do? But that's their personality. So my wife started a club in our house for girls and boys. And he invited those girls to cook in the kitchen. And they were doing cakes and they were doing that. And they have a Bible club in our house, and they get together every Tuesday. And now they are about 15 to 20 girls. They have been doing that for 3 years, and they just love that. So what I invite you to start doing that. Take the opportunity to share with others, and don't be afraid. There are many other families that are waiting for you to do something. You will be surprised how beautiful the answer from other families are going to be. Okay, well, time for questions. You can take that mic for answers.
Thank you very much. Hi, hello, thank you. When I lived in England, I'm Brazilian. I live in São Paulo. I saw families exchanging. Sorry, my English is not perfect, but I saw a father being home, educating, while a wife was doing her career, and sometimes they exchange time by time. So just to break the idea that always needed to be the mom home. But my question is, when both the parents want to do a career that needs to be outside, like a doctor or something that you can't do like home office. In your experience in general, how it does work? How can they keep children home, but need to be outside because they are also want to do something for themselves? And then my second question is, how does it work? Because I'm not homeschooling yet my daughter. She's 15. We are just talking about for the next year. And my question is, how sometimes we say like, oh, thank you God they went to school because we wanted some time for ourselves. Yeah? Because also, of course, we love our children, but sometimes we are also not just mom all the time. We are women. We want to also to have my own space. So how does it work when children is home all the time? How do you fit all together?
Oh, is that working? Whoa, all right. I'll take a stab at it since I'm holding the mic. That's where grandparents, if you're blessed to have grandparents nearby, can really help, because if you have both parents working, and in these days that's often the case, the grandparents can help with that transition time. Some parents will go to the sacrifice of trying to arrange one or the other's career so that they're on a different shift, so that one of them can always be home. I mean, I've seen parents do that. Some parents even will decide one of them will quit for a season their job, stay home with the children while they're homeschooling them. But if you have grandparents, then that can be the continuity for the family. Both parents could be maybe gone in the day and they do their homeschooling in the evening with the children. And maybe that the grandparents can follow through during the day with any assignments that the parents gave them. So that's one answer.
Yeah, also to get away, play dates. A lot of times churches or different, even a homeschool group they'll hire someone to come in and watch kids so the moms can have some time off and go somewhere. But I want to tell you about one lady. She was an inner city single mom in Atlanta, Georgia in the United States. And she wanted to homeschool her kids. I can't remember, you probably heard the same testimony. She had 3 or 4 kids, I think. And what she did when they were young, she bartered with another lady in her apartment building. And that lady would keep the kids during the day and make sure they were doing some of their schoolwork while she went off to the job. And then she would bake meals for this lady and bring them to her as a thank you or as payment for taking care of her kids. Then as the kids grew older and became teenagers, they could work on their own, and the older ones could watch the younger ones. So even in an example like that, where you're all alone, a single mom, you want to homeschool your kids, there are ways. We're really creative as homeschoolers.
In the United States, been working since I work at the foundation, we have a lot of single parents that mostly moms, but some fathers too that homeschool their children by themselves, and they have to work, and often they try to get jobs where they're actually working from home, or they have hours where they are home during the day and then they're working, toward the evening, and they have somebody to help with the children, to watch them. So there's lots of options that you can be pretty creative and still be able to homeschool. As far as the moms, you're talking about, mom needing some time alone. I grew up as only girl in my family, and I'm more of an introvert, and I get recharged by being alone. And when you have 7 kids, I couldn't even go to the bathroom and shut the door. I would see little fingers under the door, mommy, mommy, and I finally figured out one day that if I leave the door open a crack, they didn't bother me nearly as much. So when the door was shut all the way, it's like 5 minutes. Okay, I had a little devotional book in the bathroom. I got 5 minutes in the bathroom, alone. That's all I would get for, But my husband was wonderful in helping to bless me in this. And so when my kids were a little bit older, he started giving me one evening a week just to do whatever I wanted. Now, I confess, for a few years, I mostly just went off to the bookstore and took a stack of schoolwork to grade. But at least I was alone, and I was drinking tea, and I was listening to nice music, and nobody was saying, mommy, mommy, mommy. And if they did, I ignored them because they weren't my kids, and that became a staple, and my kids knew, don't mess with mom's Tuesday night off, But then my husband would do fun things with the kids on that night, And then it came like, Mom, don't you want to go? Don't you want to go get away so that we can, they had a lot of fun with their dad on that Tuesday night off. He would read stories. You had your reading tree. We had the bunk beds in one of the rooms, and the kids would be on the top and on the bottom, and my husband would read by flashlight, and it was somehow more exciting that way. So lots of things you can do. A friend to give you some time. They watch your children. You can have time. But it's important. It's important for moms to not get lost when they're teaching their children. And I went through that for a while. And I got to a point, I was like, who am I? I don't even know who I am. I'm just an administrator. I'm just a cook and a laundra, clean laundry. And I teach my kids. And there's so many things that I love. I love learning. And so that's a way to preserve that. And then you share what you love with your children, and they get more excited about learning then too, when you can do that.
Another question? Don't be shy. Another question? I don't know if, the question that she asked about children to go to the university. Did you answer that question? You had that question, right? About what will happen with children not ready to go to the university? Okay, I misunderstood. No questions? Okay, well, yes.
We'll be glad to stick around a little bit afterwards if anybody just wants to come up and talk to us one-on-one, or if you think of a question between time we end right now and a few minutes later, feel free to come up and see us. We also have a booth upstairs, so feel free to just search us out. Thank you.
Just very last comment. I'm sorry. Don't expect to be super mom or super dad to do this. We are all normal. We are all normal. Sometimes when you say we are homeschooling, oh, that's because you're very good at this, you're very good at that. No, don't think about it. I started homeschooling, and when I started homeschooling, I had my two children just right across the table, and one, she was always very attentive, and the other was always making noise. It was like this, and I said, well, what I did, what is going to happen with this kid? He's going to be terrible. He's not going to be successful anywhere. So he was 10, and my daughter, she decided to take the primary school test. And then my wife called me. I was at the office, and then she said, guess what? Alberto wants to present the exam as well. I said, oh my God, he's going to fail. And then she said, but he's insisting, he's 10. Primary school, you normally finished in Mexico at the age of 12. And I said, let him do it so that he knows how bad he is. So they both presented the exam, and then guess what? He had better grade than she did. I always thought that he was going to be a failure in his career. Thanks God, he went to study to the US. He did his bachelor's degree. He's now finishing his second master's degree, and he did it all with beca. ¿Cómo se fala beca? No, this is a scholarship. With the scholarship, I didn't pay anything. I thought I was going to pay a lot of money for that, and I didn't pay anything. He's getting married, and so don't expect to have brilliant kids as the world expect your kids to be brilliant. Everybody is different. Every single children is different. And don't expect you to be a super mom or a super dad to homeschool your kids. They have their opportunity to grow. Thank you very much.